Who is Walter Hughes. He is a member of the Rotary Club of Rocky Mount, Virginia, District 7570. He is a White House Champion of Change, having been nominated to that position by our illustrious Joe McLaren. And he's here this morning to talk to us about a water project that he's been involved in.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is so good to be with you. I have never, with all the clubs here in America and Canada that I've spoken to, I've never had someone sing to me. So it's just amazing. And then the dictionaries and all the work that this club does. Can I join?
He wants to join.
So today, I want to talk about what your Rotary Foundation money goes toward. And Rotary District 7600 has been working with us for a very long time. So this is your money that you've given to the Rotary Foundation with the annual fund and with the district designated funds coming back. This is your story. And this picture is at a well in a village called Domiebra. And Domiebra means, you got to love me to come this far to see me. And the Rotarians in Sunyani said, we have a well that's just over the hill. Let's see it before the club meeting. I said, sure, let's go. So we drove and we drove and we drove, and we got to a town. I said, well, this must be the well. Well, we turned right, went on a gravel road, and got out of town. I said, well, it must be right out of town. Then we drove and we drove and we drove, and then we turned right again. And this time, it was a dirt road, and we drove and we drove. And then the jungle appeared. Took over the road. And so the brush was beating on the truck. We drove and we drove, and I finally see a little sign that says Domiebra. And I see a well, but I don't see any people. And they get out and they start yelling, and people start climbing up the mountainside to get to where the well was. And so this is one town that it takes a long time to go to. And assistant governor, I mean, it's really bad when someone asks you a question and it changes your life. In this case, it was, an assistant governor said, how do we drill a well in Africa? I said, I don't do that. I work with schools and I do things with churches, but I don't do water. Well, I went back to Ghana on my next trip. And Ghana is in West Africa, in that big hunk of Africa. I looked down the well, looked in the rivers, and I said, it's really a bad problem. And so our goal was one well. And we said, if we get all the clubs in our area together, we can raise $15,000 and then check the box that we did something internationally, because our club's heart is local. So what happened on that first grant is we raised $150,000 instead of our $15,000. Oops. And so last year, well, I was sick and I couldn't go to Ghana. So in February, I was there for the entire month. And what I realized, it was 10 years to the day almost that I was in Ghana, and I rode a Greyhound bus, Africa style, from one end of the country to the other to meet Rotarians I had never met. And the town is called Tamale. And I learned about 3 years before that the chief had lived too long as chief, and they had beheaded him, and the elders in that town. And so I was a little scared and apprehensive meeting the people in this town. And so I was like, and I had the idea of a water purification system. I brought a sample, and I was going to demonstrate it. But I was like, will they like me? And so I can't imagine if my fear had overcome my willingness to get on that bus that day. And so what has happened is it has grown into 114 clubs all over the U.S. and Canada and Switzerland, in 21 U.S. states and in 35 Rotary districts. And our goal was one well. So we have now drilled over 500 wells and repaired wells and done so much more. So that goal of $15,000 turned into $2 million. But so I guess we can say we checked that box. And this is the first photo I took 10 years ago. And this is where we did the demonstration of the water purification system. And if you can tell, the water is green, and the cattle are drinking in the reservoir, and the women are fetching the water right out of that reservoir. And so I was talking to the past district governor in West Virginia. He says, this is the photograph that really touched my heart. And so I found it. There are three amazing moments when you're providing water to a community. The first is when the drill rig arrives. There's hope that they will hit water. I mean, there's a good chance that it may not happen, but the old men and women, they come out, find a place to sit. The children are in school, but they're climbing out the windows, sneaking out the doors. Pretty soon the teacher has lost all control of the class, and those kids are watching the action as they set up the drill rig and start drilling. And then the dust flies, and then they start taking soil samples. What happens next, if you're lucky, is the water flows out of that well. And there is a huge cheer in that community when that happens. Over the next 5 or 6 weeks, we pour the concrete, we install the pump. And if you're there when the pump is primed and starting to flow, it gets really quiet. And they're listening to hear the gurgling sound of the water coming out the pipe. And then the kids are all trying to get their heads underneath the pump to be the first to drink. The women have their buckets ready to haul water back home. And everybody is going to see what's happening. And when that water pours out, there's a huge cheer. The third precious moment happens, and it happens over time. You don't notice it unless you go back. And what happens is the kids and the men and women are healthy. The kids are playing in school, they're playing soccer, they're active, but they're not sick. And if you want to recruit new Rotarians for your club, send them with me to Africa. I had a friend of mine who had a friend, and I had lunch with him, and he says, I don't get Rotary. What do you do besides eat breakfast or lunch? And I said, go with me. And I explained what we do. And so we inducted him on a Thursday. On Friday, he was heading to Africa with me. And so his first meeting was in Ghana. And then he was inducted in our club officially when he got back. And then Chris Kane, he's the son of a past district governor. He didn't know what Rotary was. But Ron Cowan said, take my son, please. And so I took Chris. And Chris had no idea what Rotary is about, but he was learning how to dig a hand-dug well. And sometimes a hand-dug well finds water when a drilled well can't. It's just the width of the well is much greater. And so he realized that digging a well by hand is hard work. And so the guys who were digging it kind of laughed, but he got a chance to do that. And then Amber Wilborn, she's the wife of a Rotarian. And so when Tim joined Rotary, she goes, it's not fair that Tim gets all the fun and gets to go to the beer garden, right? So she joined Rotary and went with me on the next trip. And you can see her, she's testing the water here at a university to make sure that the water coming out of the tank is safe to drink. And in that case, it wasn't. And I went to the provost and said, I want you to shock this tank and have healthy water. And so they're always talking about this crazy American who said that their students should have healthy water. So that's part of the way we go. And then this man, he's a professor from Murray State in Kentucky. And their club just sponsored him to go so he could learn about clean water in Ghana and provide that back in India. So this last trip in February, I had 53 new wells to check on in 1 month. I was able to see 50 out of the 53, and 4 of them were not working, and mainly because the dry season, the water table declines. And so some of the pipes weren't long enough to reach the water table in the dry season. And you've got to make it through the dry season with a well. So we added pipe to those. And then this one on the right, we had to change, and it's turned it into this hydro pump. And it's a hydraulic pump that helps to pull the water up 300 feet. So when you're pumping water by hand, when it's that deep, you need this new pump. So that's the first time we've used that pump. And the four-way test, when you're working with the leaders in the community, you build friendships. And when that water turns on for the very first time, this is a small-town water system, the smiles are everywhere. And so it's just wonderful seeing that community change. I am in the front of the crowd. Some of my team members are in the back. And a couple of women were there with their buckets. And this one woman, she tasted the water. And she says to her friend, "It tastes so sweet. I have never tasted water this fine before." And she told her friend, "You must drink this water too." And so she says, "I never dreamed that we would have water like this in our community." And so we provided 53 new wells just this year, about 400 microflush toilets, and I'll explain what those are in a minute. And then we had a new club that kept bothering me, and he says, "We want to work with you." And I said, "I work with 4 or 5 clubs in Ghana. I can't add a 5th. And so he kept texting, emailing, chatting, and I finally said, "Uncle, I'll work with you." And so they did some great work. And it was good to have some young Rotarians who are focused on doing good in the world. And we had a new computer lab. It's for engineers and architects. It's at a tech school like Virginia Tech, but it's Sunyani Polytechnic in Ghana. And it's going to be used for all the engineering disciplines. So I'm really excited about that, but I forced all the departments to talk to each other so that they could use the engineering computer lab for all of the engineers. And we dedicated a new school. Rotary International in 2013 called me and said, "We want to send a film crew to Ghana to document your work." And I said, "Well, I've just been there." They go, "Well, we're going back in May." And so I finally decided to go. And we drilled a second well in a village called Tonoswano. Well, the kids in this town were so generous and so productive that through our church, through 2 Christmas offerings, we built a school. And with Rotary, we can provide sanitation, we can provide desks and computers and that kind of thing. But what they said is, "Walter saw us." And it means that I didn't look past them. I got to know them. I walked down the mountainside to where they used to fetch water that was dirty and unsafe. I walked through their town. I saw their homes. I got to see their families. I got to know them. And so it really meant to me that I cared and that they knew that I cared. And more than that, the chief in this next, he's 104 years old as of last year. He'd ask me, "Why have you come to my village?" And I would say, "I lost my heart in your village, and I'm trying to find it." And that would be my answer every time I came. And he said, "I have a dream that our children have a good, safe place to go to school." And that was a dream that he gave me 5 years ago. And so now we've been able to make that happen with this new school block here. And then I dressed up as a chief, which I've been dressing up. My name in the north, in the Montpellier language, is Ma Na Ba, which means chief of peace. But in Tonoswano, it's a southern tribe. And so now I'm the chief of education, I think. And so I dressed up, and two guys helped me to get in this toga, African style. And so they said, "First, your sunglasses have to go, your American hat has to go." And then they said, "Take off your shirt." So I took off my shirt, and they wrapped me. And it was, the guy in his 20s was so proud to be teaching me how to dress properly. And then once I was dressed, there's no tucking into this toga. It just kind of, it hangs on you. So you got to kind of hold the end of it so you don't let it fall apart. They said, "Okay, now your pants have to go." So I said, "Okay." But I stayed together. And what was amazing is a fellow champion of change from California, his name is Neil. He works for Lights for Literacy, is the charity that his Rotary Club does. And they gave me 3 systems. of solar panels and LED light strips. We put one system at the school in one of the classrooms, and one at an orphanage and one at a church. And so imagine the pandemonium when you flip the light switch for the very first time in a village that's never had lights. And that is this light strip right here. And they're pointing at it, and what's amazing is they're taking pictures of it with their cell phones. They don't have electricity, but they have cell phones to take a picture of lights. And so it's just amazing. The government has run telephone poles to the town, but there's no wires on the poles. So our goal is for Rotary to fund a computer lab. So imagine going from no electricity to a computer lab in a year, and that's our hope, if the government can finally get the power there. So, but what I've noticed here is there's a lot of women running things. And it's the same way in Ghana. It's women of vision. And Stella is one of those women that changed my life. Stella gave this impassioned speech on thanking us for a new well in her community. She is an assemblywoman who beat out 4 men for the job. And she goes, I am an old woman. And at night, I have to go behind that rock to use the toilet. Sanitation is a dignity and a right. And we don't have it anywhere in my town. And I said, Stella, I don't do sanitation. And so what happened was, I said, Stella, uncle, I will learn about sanitation. And then the woman in the middle, she's a nurse. She's listening to a baby's heartbeat with a wooden stethoscope that we used to use in America in the early 1900s, okay? And the woman on the right, she's Muslim. She has a passion for water and sanitation, and she works with the district assembly, who helps us implement all the projects in her area. And so what's amazing is Ann Matthews, who's the past RI vice president, was in Boston doing a PEDS training. And a club president came up and goes, you've got to meet a club member. And his name is Dr. Stephen Mecca. He invented this toilet that Bill Gates gave a grant to through the Gates Foundation to build a better toilet. And so Ann passed that name to me, and I checked it out, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And this toilet, there's no smell, no flies, and no sewage. It's not a latrine. It's not a flush toilet that puts it into a holding tank that you have to empty at some point to pollute something. It uses earthworms to break down the human waste into compost. So you wash your hands with a cup of water, it flows out of the sink straight into the toilet. And that's your next flush. And so this is a sample of the toilet, and some are painted all kinds of colors. Like, don't you want a green bathroom? And so this is a grass hut, and they put the toilet right next to it. And so in the compound, they broke the wall to build the toilet. So they've put them, some are placed further away because they're adding a new hut, and so they want space to add the extra room before they add the toilet. And so this has been a transformational project for sanitation, and we're trying to get the word out all over Rotary. It's hard because we have to go really word of mouth. But it so far beats a KVIP latrine. And so we're still doing those with some projects around the world, but I'm hoping that we can get the word out that this is the way to go. What we're doing is we're empowering leaders. I think my job is to encourage, strengthen, and lift up Rotarians and leaders in every community that we work. If I could just summarize what I do, that's what I do. But I ask, what is your dream? What is your vision? What is your passion for helping the people of your community? And how can Rotary help achieve that? And so what we're doing is we're enabling and empowering families, schools, and communities. We were taken to Akrophem, and this city had a solar-powered small-town water system that was broken for 10 years. And they said, Rotary, come in and fix it. I said, no. I said, open a bank account, set up a water and sanitation committee, and by the way, we need 2 women on that committee. Start collecting money for water that's not flowing. And show us the bank account with those collections. And when you've done that, then we will put you on the list. And so within 3 months, they sent us the bank account statement where they had raised $15. Now they're raising $1,500 a year. And there's a woman who collects the money in that village. And so what's happened is now this fetch point is what they call them. It's faucets that are low and ones you can stand with your bucket and fill your water bucket while you're standing. Well, what they've done is they put sides on it and a front and a gate. They did all of that without asking Rotary's permission. Because now they had their own money, right? And within 2 years, they can drill a new well in their community or extend the water lines to other parts of town. You follow me? So will they wait 10 more years to fix something? No. They've got it going. And Quarmy, this community is near Tomley, the town that I was afraid to go to 10 years ago. Quarmy, that whole village is Muslim, but I felt so welcome. And he said, we did it. I led everybody in our town to dig their foundation and build their walls. We did it. And he took me around to every household, and each one had a slightly different design. Some were mud brick, some were concrete block, but they all did it. And he goes, and this family couldn't dig their foundation. So we pitched in as a community. We dug their foundation, hauled the sand, and we helped them build their blocks. Right? So that's the difference. And we went to a school, and in fact, we chartered a whole new club because we built bathrooms at all the schools and drilled wells at many of the schools in Cincinnati. And so a new club started where they're all below the age of 30. And the only person above the age of 30 was the sponsoring Rotarian. And they had to have him. But they joined because of the action they saw in their town. Well, the state experimental wanted water, sanitation, and computer lab. And I went into a room and I said, why is this room empty? They go, well, the parents built it. Because the thought was, if we built a computer lab, the computers would come. I said, wow. And they go, we are willing to dig the foundation for the toilet block. And they went to the district assembly, which is like the county government here, and asked for the district to fund the water tank. And the parents raised the money for the water tank stand and to mechanize with the electric pump. So Rotary drilled the well. They did the rest with that water system. And then I said, you know, you've inspired me. We're going to buy computers for that computer lab. And so that one school got water, sanitation, and a computer lab, but the PTA led it. And this is a place that's near Tomley as well, but they're using mud balls, which is, someone corrected me and said, it's adobe. But you're using mud balls and you're putting it on a wall and then scraping it smooth. While the boys are helping their fathers make the balls, and they're passing it to the dad to put on the wall. Well, I saw small bricks in that village. I said, what's the small bricks for? They go, well, the kids think that if their parents can build a toilet, then they can do it better. So what Rotary is doing now is we're empowering the next generation. So now we're not waiting around until someone from America can come in and fix something. The leaders and the parents are changing their community. We're also, we've done one microcredit credit project before, but now we're applying it to businesses, water, and sanitation. So our goal is, as a community, we want you to put down about 25% of the value of that project. Then take a loan out for 25%, and then Rotary will pay 50%. So that means as Rotarians, we can do twice as much work as we were doing before. But half the cost is funded by that community. And then they can see that they can reach the full cost of a new project. And we were able to, by putting wells where people were sick in Ghana, we were able to eradicate a disease called guinea worm disease. It's a 3-foot-long parasite that grows in your body for a year. And when it comes out, it feels like a hot iron's been stuck to your skin. And you pull out 1 inch a day until you get it out. And so it's hard to walk, it's hard to go to school, it's hard to play or do any of that kind of stuff. And once we eradicated guinea worm disease out of Ghana in 2010, I was bored. And I said, where's the worst place in the world for this disease? Well, it was South Sudan. And I was talking to another PETS group, and these president-elects said, we want to do an international project. I said, do you have anybody from a different country? They go, no. They go, but our churches are doing something in South Sudan. I said, okay, that's a good, so it all fit. And we raised $302,000 for wells in South Sudan. The money arrived right as the civil war restarted in South Sudan. And I called the Rotary Foundation. I said, can you stop payment on this grant? And they said, let's check. They said, the money arrived yesterday. And so I go, what's your policy for doing good in a civil war zone? And for some reason, they have no policy on that. So through a miracle, we were able to drill wells in a war zone. We found the contractor who could find the water and the crew that could get the rig where it needed to go. And we drilled 21 new wells, and we repaired 66 wells in South Sudan in the far southeast corner of the country. And when I went to speak to the Rotarians in 2013, I said, imagine a day without disease in your country. And he said, we can't think that far. It's too big of a dream. And so what's happened is Tim Wilborn, who's my current club president, the guy who asked what Rotary is all about, not only did he go to Ghana with me, but he went with me to South Sudan in the fall of 2015. And you know you're in a war zone when a tank's going past your hotel. You know you're in a war zone when the county officer is carrying a pistol in the back of his pants. And you know you're in a war zone when the guy is walking past you, when you're checking on the well, has a bayonet on the back of his rifle. But we were welcomed, and the kids here are benefiting from a Rotary well. They're orphans from that war. But we were able to provide water for that refugee camp. And the plumes of smoke, it's hard to see, but those are lives of people being killed and their homes destroyed. But what we learned is Rotary was able to eradicate guinea worm disease out of the southeast corner of South Sudan. And this is the guinea worm. But we've gone from over 1,000 cases in 2010 in South Sudan to 6 cases last year. There's only 25 cases of guinea worm disease in the whole world right now. So polio is the passion for Rotary, but we will be able to say as Rotarians that we helped eradicate 2 diseases, guinea worm disease and polio. And I'm not sure which one will be first, but I'm hoping that they both end this year. And so what I've learned is there's 6 areas of focus for Rotary that we want to focus on. We provide peace by providing hope and care and compassion. We can't fight hate with hate. We fight hate with love. And when you have a future for your children, when you can provide for your children, there's something to hold on to, something to do. And so all the other 6 areas, the other 5 areas of focus, water sanitation, education, and literacy, like your dictionaries, disease prevention, economic development, and maternal and child health, those all feed into peace. And so we've chartered 6 new Rotary clubs in South Sudan. Why? Because they believe that as Rotarians, they can secure peace for their country. And with our help, it can happen. So when we think of what we can do as Rotarians, it's way beyond what we can imagine when we unite together as Rotarians. And so we appreciate there's many signs with 7,600 in Ghana thanks to the contributions of our clubs here in this district. And so I just want to say thanks for inviting me. Thanks for singing to me. And I've got a lot of ideas about what we should do with my club in Rocky Mount. So I just want to thank you for having the leadership in the district. And at Rotary International, Joe, it's just an honor to be at your club. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rotary 4 Wake Up
Thank you.
Club.
Okay.